Hello everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I'm going to talk about a few fintech stocks. SQ Block is the first one. We know that I've drawn this descending broadening wedge over here ever since price was down here. And so far it's been actually working out miraculously well. It's been bouncing through this wedge and it went all the way back up. Make a little bit of a cup right here for or handle right here for the cup. And it's really spending a lot of time trying to break above this trend line here of this broadening descending wedge. The more attempts it makes, usually the more likely it's going to break through. It's already made attempts number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the 6th time is really making multiple attempts throughout the week. Even over here, the candles over here has got these wicks underneath of it, so there's a lot of energy trying to push about this wedge. Nothing's easy, it's going to take some time, but overall I think it's looking pretty well. I also like the fact that the buy volume over the last few months have really been increasing, whereas the sell volume is really not that impressive. I think Wall Street is really starting to change its mind, start to pay attention more in terms of growth aspect, in terms of the forecast numbers. I think they're really liking what they're seeing. And it's reflecting a lot on the volume analysis here too. It's reflecting a lot of how it looks like it really wants to break out of this area. One other thing to look at a weekly chart would be to look at the bull market support band. And it shows you a pretty clear trend change. Here as it goes down, it's been a negative trend. It's been served as pretty good resistance here and here. And over here, it's just been kind of oscillating back and forth, up and down. And now it's starting to point up pretty reliably and serve as pretty reliable support for weeks number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. On the 6th week is when you had earnings that really push out of this range as the band is pointing upwards. Now, there is a potential for the price could spend maybe a couple more additional weeks over here, and maybe the band does need to kind of go up and kind of capture and push the price up higher to push it out of this wedge. But I think it's trying, and I'm not surprised if it just kind of does it on its own. The weekly chart, if you look at the Ichimoku cloud, something also very, very nice is also happening on the weekly. Initially, it served as a resistance here. Over here, there's a little bit of like a false breakout, a little bit of a deviation, but this kind of shooting star candle over here kind of gave it away. Yeah, it's probably going to be the top. It's probably going to go back breaking down, but I found it actually quite resilient in terms of how I just kind of hung around beneath the cloud here a little bit before pushed back above the cloud again. Now it's spending week number 1, 2, and 3 above the cloud. It's getting more and more like this is a real breakout here, and when things get above the cloud, usually getting set relatively more bullish. Now if you look at the monthly of the Ichimoku cloud, SQ still doesn't have that Tenkan Kijun cross. It's still kind of somewhere stuck in the middle, and right now price is still kind of a little bit stuck at this volume shelf over here. I think once it breaks about this volume shelf, once it breaks about like 83 or so, or maybe even a little bit smaller volume shelf over here, once it breaks about maybe like 88 or so, I think it's going to go pretty close up to the bottom of the cloud right here, and it can potentially get to triple digits in 120s, 130s relatively soon. There's a volume shelf over here that could serve as a little bit of resistance between 125 and 130. But once it breaks out of here, this range, I think could probably break out there for the remainder of 2024. The other thing to look at this is, again, to look at the Bollinger Bands. Bollinger Bands are not quite expanding quite just yet. It does look like the 20-month moving average initially looks like it was going to curl up, but it's starting to flatten a little bit. So it's a little bit equivocal. I would like to see it expanding a little bit more energy, try to break out of this range. But over the last few months, it does look like buying volume seems to be picking up. So I am optimistic. I'm happy to keep on accumulating this stock when it's below $80, or when it's below, even just $83. I think it's still a pretty good deal. Could it potentially come down and test this shelf right here? Possible, right? There's a pretty big shelf right here that is around $68. I can see potentially come back down here and get some additional hump before going back up. and let the 20-month moving average kind of touch this area out here before going up. But I'm happy to start accumulating at this range right here based on what I'm seeing on the weekly. That's SQ. The other stock to look at is Hood. This is the monthly chart for Hood. Hood looks really good. It's got that crocodile mouth opening, top lip, bottom lip. It's got a tongue that's kind of sticking up. Price is on the upper part of the Bollinger Band. If you look at SQ, the same thing was also happening. The price, even though it doesn't really have that crawling up, price still tends to stay on the upper part of the Bollinger Band, which tells me usually once it starts to develop a trend, more than likely the trend is going to be bullish. But it's just not as mature as Robinhood's. Robinhood's is clearly already had this Bollinger Band squeeze and it's expanding, and right now it's pointing up with the 20-month moving average. So Robinhood looks a lot stronger than Square at this point. Buying volume is also stronger here for Robinhood. If you look over in the volume shelf, it's already starting to break above a lot of these heavier volume shelves. It start to try to attack this area up here around like 19 or 20. Once it's able to kind of break above this range right here around 16.2. Really the next part is going to be around like 19 to 20. And then beyond that, there's really not much of a volume history here. I mean, sure, price can go around here and make some volume history, but if it doesn't do that, I really think they can go up to the low 30s in a hurry up here in this volume shelves up here before you see any real strong resistance. So this chart is a pretty good looking chart on the monthly. If you look at the Ichimoku Cloud, you can also see that this is also strong than Square. You already have this Tenkan Kijun cross right here, which is bullish. And the Tenkan had already served as initially kind of oscillating between it. And then right here it bounds, it serves as support now. So allowing the price to go up higher. There's not enough price history to actually have a cloud, not like Square or SQ or Block. There's not enough history to have a cloud quite just yet, so I can't really look at that on the monthly chart. Now, on the weekly chart, there's enough history to start having a cloud that's shown here. And the trend is very nice. Rejection, rejection, false breakout, rejection, breakout, backtest, and run. I mean, right now it's running. So the weekly is not going to tell you too much, with the exception of the volume is very, very nice, signifying a very good bull trend right here. Now, if you also look at the bull market support band, it also bounced right off the bull market support band right here, and it's just shut up just like that. Could it fell to here? Could it kind of wait sideways a little bit for the bull market support band to come up before it keeps going? Possible. Or it could just keep going, or it could go down to meet the band, form a little bit of like a higher low before going up. That's also a possibility. There is no, right answer here. And if it ends up going down and dipping down, I would imagine the area that dips down to maybe like 14.25, somewhere around there, form a low, form a higher low, and then going up. But overall, this is a very, very good look for Robinhood. I'm glad to have bought into this in Q1. I already spent a lot of time talking about SOFI. I'm not going to spend too much time here. All I can say is that it's kind of just oscillating around the bull market support band, up and going down. It's not really doing too much here. A lot of energy is being built up here. And if you want to look into my analysis or SOFI, my other video has talked a lot more about it. Same thing with the cloud. If you look at Ichimoku Cloud, it breaks above and it breaks underneath. It's just basically kind of oscillating around here. Obviously, I like it to be back above, and I like the fact that it's forming a little bit more of a wick right here. But the sell volume most recently seemed to be pretty heavy. So I don't know exactly what to make out of it. All I know is just been kind of oscillating around here with a lot of energy being built up. We'll see what happens. I already gave you my thought on kind of like the greater scheme on the monthly. You can already see that the Bollinger Bands comes with a 20-month moving average, and the 20-month moving average is pointing up, and the price basically just tested the 20-month moving average this week and found support and bounced up a little bit. It's still early in the month, so there's still going to be a lot of more price action to see how this candle closes. But I also like the fact that it basically get to the bottom of this volume shelf right here and found support and bounce up. We'll see what happens after this. the other thing to show you is, as I showed on the other video, you did have a bullish Tenkan Kijun cross. So I think SOFI is a little bit more bullish than SQ. But the issue is both of those are now serving a little bit as a resistance. I really would like to see the Tenkan red right here. I really like to see this becoming a little bit more of like a support, but we don't have the benefit of that right now. But that's SOFI. I already spent a lot of time talking about it. There's really not much update today. Another one that is quite popular is Upstart. Now, Upstart is one of those stocks that are a little bit falling behind, especially after it dropped a lot from the last earnings. Still doesn't have that monthly Tenkan Kijun cross. The Tenkan is still serving as resistance very clearly, and you would really like to see price kind of break above it and backtest it and go up. That hasn't happened yet. But also like the fact that buying volume tends to be pretty high over here, and selling volume tends to be down. Again, buy volumes tends to pretty impulsively go up, and sell volume also seems to be going down a little bit here. So that does seem to have a little bit of like accumulation range right here based on volume analysis. That's a good thing. If you look at the Bollinger Band and see the lower Bollinger Band is all the way down here, but it's really starting to flatten. Like it's literally flat from here to here. That tells me that maybe there's a trend change that is really happening right here on the monthly. And with that, it's getting a little bit more encouraging. I mean, obviously, I like to see the price really staying back above, for the most part, above the 20-month moving average on the upper part of the Bollinger Band for it to continue to kind of develop a little bit of a bull trend and go up. It looks like that's what it's trying to do based on volume. It looks like that's what it's trying to do based on 20-month moving average. But it's just not quite there yet to have confirmation. So still a couple of things to kind of look out for. If you look at the weekly, if you look at the Ichimoku cloud, it's not very nice right now. It's just below the cloud. But again, it's it could just be kind of doing this like weird oscillation thing. I think there's a pretty decent chance that it could, try to test back up at the bottom of the cloud and see whether or not it breaks through. We'll see what it does. The other thing to look on a weekly is the bull market support band, and again, it's just kind of been oscillating around it, so I don't really have much to say about it. If it's below, is it bearish? No, not really. If it's above, is it bullish? No, not really. It's just kind of flat. It's just kind of been oscillating, building up vanilla energy, kind of like what SOFI is doing. Although SOFI does look a little bit more bullish than this. Hard to say, although the technical seems like it's trending the right direction, even though there's no confirmation. And that's Upstart. AFRM, this is one of the stock that I do own. If you look at the weekly alone, you can see that it's really just trying to form like a 3-month long bull flag right here. It's kind of a beautiful bull flag. And the bull flag is formed on pretty low volume. Now, when I see something like this, I really think that the downtrend could be over pretty soon, especially since it's just been finding support right around this volume shelf right up here. And basically, it's losing a lot of energy in terms of its downtrend. I think it's almost done in terms of its correction, and I already expected this correction to come, because whenever you get so far away from the bull market support band, you're gonna most likely gonna end up cooling down to meet the band, kiss the band, and allow the band to kind of push you up higher. And that's exactly what's been happening. It found the band, touched the band, went inside the band, found support so far, and it's also finding support at this volume shelf right up here. So I think it's probably going to be okay. It's probably going to push the price up even higher. It could still kind of oscillate here a little bit, kind of like what Palantir did before finally actually showing you some pretty bullish movement. But I'm just not sure. I mean, the bearish commitment here is just really, really low, and the bullish commitment seems to be quite high. So I think the downtrend here is probably over soon. If you look at the Ichimoku cloud, like there's really nothing to look at. It's just a bull thing. Can it go down a little bit further to test the Kijun? Possible. Around like 34, possible. And there's also a little bit of volume shelf over here, possible, right? But because of the low commitment from the sellers, I'm not sure whether or not that's going to happen. Now, that's the weekly. If you look at the monthly Bollinger Band, you can see that the 20-month moving average is nicely pointing up, even though it's it's kind of a little bit A little bit decelerating a little bit, but it's still pointing up pretty nicely. The Bollinger Band is fully expanded, especially the down underneath right here. So all of these are, and the price is very, very convincingly above the upper Bollinger Band. So all of this is a very, very strong indication that if you let the technicals work out, it's probably going to go up higher and expand the Bollinger Band further. It's just been kind of cooling down because of how far above the upper Bollinger Band this has been. It's forming a little bit of, a bull flag that we're talking about. And there's also potential for this to form what we call a rising 3 pattern, where you have a big candle here, and then you have 3 candle that is inside this big candle right here. And then what's going to happen is you spend 3 months trying to reverse this 1 month of very impulsive action. You're unable to do so on low volume. After the 3rd month, it's just going to go bam. It's just going to say, you know what, you tried. We're going to take over now. This has kind of got that look that's building up here for me. I'm not sure. That very similar thing happened here. One right there, bam, bam, bam. Bears tried, decrease volume in terms of this bearish action. Bulls sniffed it out, saying, you know what, you spent 3 months trying. We're going to take over now. Bam, all the way up here. Now, I think we might be seeing a very, very similar thing kind of here, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a rising 3. It could potentially just be a rising 2 if we end up, for whatever reason. March seasonality usually is a little bit worse, but for whatever reason, if March ends up being a good month, this candle could potentially engulf the other 2 and just keep going up. I mean, right now it's on the upper part of the Bollinger Band. 20-month moving average is pointing up, and I just showed you on the weekly that the 20-week moving average, is pointing up, is touching the candle right here. Most likely it's going to serve as support if it's up pointing up like that, just kind of like how it did over here. And if it's down pointing, it could serve as resistance. I think right now it's up pointing. It's probably going to serve as support. It's probably going to end up pushing price a little bit higher from that. So I just show you 5 fintech stocks that I'm looking at. I am in 4 of them. I'm in SQ, Hood, SOFI, and AFRM. I'm not in Upstart. I just feel like I'm a little bit, fintech heavy. The best looking one is still going to be Hood. The second one, or equally good, is going to be AFRM. But Hood is really starting to have pretty good technicals. AFRM, the one thing. Okay, so the one thing that I was looking at AFRM that wasn't as good as Hood really was the Ichimoku Cloud on monthly. It still doesn't have the cross quite just yet, whereas Hood already had the cross. Even SOFI had the cross, it's just the price action was underneath of it. So I'm going to rank right now Hood number 1, AFRM number 2, SOFI number 3, SQ also maybe equal number 3, but maybe more like number 4, and an Upstart number 5. And I'm going to keep adding. I already have my Hood position fully built up. I'm going to keep adding to SQ. I'm going to keep adding to SOFI. I also have a full position of AFRM already built up months ago. So I'm just going to let this thing ride and see what it takes me. All right. Close to 20-minute mark. Thank you for listening. Bye.